Before we even begin, I'd say this is just like an added point of confusion because on screen it says that my battery has another 11 hours and 4 minutes, and I am not getting anywhere near that amount of recording time from this NPF 970 battery because I can't just sit around not getting high all day, you know. That would be rude of me to myself. You know, I can't just sit around not getting high all day. That's fucked up. That'd be fucked up. You know? And I don't like myself, but I think higher of myself than to not be higher. Okay, so let's start this on the open gate and then like pan in as we're heating up last night's oil. It's like that, oh, what was that 80s band? It was something Midnight, or I guess actually I think that was it, Midnight Oil or something like this, except this is the 4 o'clock in the evening, afternoon, whatever you want to call it, oil. Leftover oil, if you will, from yesterday. Something to those effects. Cheers, or whatever. I am sorry if I let out a million coughs. Yeah. Yabba dabba doo. I'm trying to save my major cough for the end. The cough is like the grand finale or whatever. Baby dolls. By the way, that's a work in progress back there. I'm going to clean that up. Where I'm getting help. We're going to get that cleaned up. And then I'm going to put more of my dolls and stuff back there. Because I do want to start filming in here more again. You. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You. 5. Fuck. I told you that was going to happen. Ow, ow. Oh, ow. That was kind of hoit. So we're going to do that again. Because it's my first buzz of the day, whatever. But obligatory, or obligatory, whatever, information. We are shooting on the 20 to 60 millimeter, 20 to 60 millimeter kit S series kit lens. Apparently did not come with the lens hood, and my other lens hood will apparently not fit it. Whatever. We are at ISO 800, f-stop of 3.5. We will here in a little bit try going up to 40 millimeter and 60 millimeter along with the variable aperture. We are shooting at 6K open gate, if I did not mention that. We're obviously cropped in, as you saw at the beginning and stuff. And also, the screen is lying to me because I do not have 10 hours and 50 minutes worth of battery on here. There's no way. We did do some battery testing on both the NPF 970 and the NPF 740 batteries, which we will get to. But first, by the way, also, we are drinking today on Jenny Orange Tega. I have been saying that wrong this whole time. It's supposed to be Jenna Orange Tega, but you know, I'm a middle-aged man with name confusion, so fucking forgive me, you son of a bitch. Love you. Well, do her second dad there, boy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not 6, 7. or whatever. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know much in this world. Well, at least I got my poop out between dabs. Oh, but you didn't see that, so I'm sorry. Ooh. You're right. You're right. I appreciate you. You know, and I agree. I'm glad that I left my clothes on. Because I'm gonna be the one that has to edit this fucking video, and I don't want to see that. I don't know nobody else want to see that. So, if you haven't figured it out yet, or you didn't hear me when I just said it a couple minutes ago, you dumb bastard, um, we are on the 20 to 60 millimeter 3.5 now. This is the kit lens that would have come with the camera. Just oh, hold on, I'm catching my breath here for a sec. There's a cough in wait. If you missed the rest of the Tommy G Goes Full Frame series, well, actually the whole series, because this is the addendum, just because I was anxious to like wrap up the series and forgot, a couple things, but also I didn't know I was going to win this lens. Anyway, I digress. Um, so I couldn't afford the extra $300 to get the camera with the kit lens on the payment plan. So then I found the following month, I found the kit lens on an auction on eBay, used, of course, without the lens hood, unfortunately. So now I'm going to have to find that somewhere. But, whew, I won it at auction for $200, which would be $100 less than I would have paid for it if I had gotten it with the camera. So I mean, it's a good deal on that, and mainly it was just because I needed something wide angle. That's 50 millimeter that I got with the camera. To me, that's the most important focal length, but I do also need a wide angle, and I'm gonna need a zoom. Unfortunately, that one's gonna have to wait. And yes, I know 20 millimeter to 60 millimeter technically is a zoom, but you know what I mean. I mean a real zoom, like something like the 70 to 200, or even better, the 70 to 300. That'd be nice. That'd be really nice. Unfortunately, that lens is like $1,200. So I'm probably going to have to finish paying off the camera and then put that lens on a payment plan. And I guess that's just the way it goes. This is the first that I'm like actually recording anything with it. And oh, by the way, if I hadn't mentioned this already, shut up about my messy room. It's a work in progress. It's been a work in progress for like the past 3 years or whatever since I moved in here. I will say, because I do have the HDMI from the S5 2X running out into my TV as a monitor, just so I could have a monitor like up on the big screen. And, I will say, obviously, the bokeh is not as good, it's not as strong. I did have to raise the ISO from 640 to 800 because of the, slower aperture. It doesn't take in as much light. There's a big difference between 1.8 and 3.5, and so overall, I do think that the picture on the prime, on that 50 millimeter prime, is a lot better. But that being said, I mean, it doesn't look bad. It looks good. It looks sharp. It's just not as much bokeh and everything. And you can create more bokeh with a lens like this than like what we're getting here. This is like almost no bokeh at all. It's just a tiny little bit, but you know, just by shooting somewhere with more distance uh, between you and the subject behind you will help create more better bokeh. Just, non-pro tip, just the tip, or as they say. I think that's what that means, just the tip. So before we get into like, I'm sorry, I keep looking over at the TV because that's again, that's my monitor for this video. But oh yeah, there's a couple more things I want to talk about before we try out the 40 millimeter and 60 millimeter links. But let me say first, the 20 millimeter is probably mostly all we're going to use for this camera because I didn't really buy it to use as a zoom lens. I bought it to use as a wide angle, and all of the wide angle primes are too expensive. Too expensive. And I think that there was one that was right around the $300 mark. It's like either Seven Artisans or like Titty Artisans or one of those cheaper brands that is like, it's a prime, it's a fairly fast, pretty fast aperture. I think it was like 2 or something, but manual focus only. For the GH5 and Micro Four Thirds, that was okay because like the zoom or the autofocus on the GH5 was mostly trash anyway. It was Contra based, and Contra, like the game, Contra based, contrast based. I know, Contra based, but so it didn't really matter as much on the GH5 because, you're mostly manual focusing all the time anyway. I did find that there is when the camera stops recording, or like the battery dies suddenly while the camera's recording, and it corrupts that file, which is a problem I had. The reason I'm bringing that up, because that inhibited our NPF battery tests. However, I did find that Lumix has their own free tool to fix those corrupted movie files. And so I downloaded that to, unfortunately, only works on Windows. So I downloaded it to one of my Windows computers. And, I just have to, I guess, fix it on the Windows computer and then move it to my Mac for editing after that, whenever that happens. But yeah, so I think that there might be an option inside the camera that I didn't know about now, but I saw a video with somebody who had a video repair tool inside, I think was the GH6, and it said in the title that worked on several different cameras, and it did list the S5 2X under that list. So I haven't looked inside the menus to see if that tool does in fact exist within this camera. So maybe I will, look for that later and then, post something in like a title or, a caption or something across the screen. That's what it mean. That's how it been. We did do some battery tests, and I don't feel good about the battery tests that we did. I mean, as we talked about in the other S5 or Tommy G Goes Full Frame S5 2X videos, I did predict that, that I would probably only get about half of the life on the batteries, on the NPF batteries that I did with the GH5. And that's just about right, except there's some really weird things with that. So, anyway, I did the NPF 970 battery test first, and it's not a very scientific test. I did the exact same thing pretty much that I did with the GH5, with the tests on the GH5, which was, fully charged the battery, of course, set it up, and just let it record until the battery died. Go back, check out the video, see how long it recorded. On the GH5, I got just about, it was like, I think between 7.5 to 8 hours on the 970, and then, everything was dead. On this one, however, I got about, I think it was about 4 hours and 40 minutes before it died. And when it died, this is where it gets really weird because the camera wouldn't cut back on, which would be normal for a dead battery. But when I hit the button to see, there's a little button on the NPF plate to, like, help you gauge like how much is left on that battery. It showed that there's still 2 bars. So, like, if I wore the battery down enough to where there's no juice in it left to power the camera at all, much less record, why is it still showing that I got like half of the bars? It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't remember it doing that on the tests with the GH5. And surprisingly, the NPF 740 battery only got about, on the GH5, it was like 4 hours or something, 4 or 5 hours. And on the S52X, it only got, I think, was about an hour and a half, maybe an hour 40, something like that. And again, it gets weird because after it stopped, the uh, the NPF plate thing said that there was still 2 bars left on the charge. And I did, by the way, I did transfer the recordings from the 970 test to the computer and clear off the card before I started the test for the 740. Just, get that out of the way. But then I tried to turn the camera back on as I did with the 970 battery, but with the 740, the camera cut back on. And so I just went ahead and started recording again. And the 740 continued to record for another 5 minutes before it shut down again. And then I, I don't think that I tried turning the camera back on, but I did check the NPF plate display again. And once again, still says I had 2 bars. So I don't know what the deal is with that. And so that means that the 740 battery really is only going to give me a little bit more than what the internal batteries are giving me, which is the internal batteries are giving me, the Panasonic one is giving me maybe just over an hour, and the Tilta ones I think are giving me like just under an hour, but it's close enough, it's about an hour for the internal batteries. So, the NPF 740 is not that much more. Just, it does add the extra hassle of, setting up the NPF plate and running the dummy battery into the DTAP, and all of that stuff. But, that extra 40 minutes or whatever it is, I probably wouldn't try using the extra full 40 minutes. However, if I'm doing like a nature shoot and it's somewhere pretty isolated, that I can do this, I'll just set the camera up and let it record for a full hour and 20 minutes, and then come and stop the recording. Because, excuse me, and it would be worth adding the NPF plate or whatever still, just to get that extra 20 minutes or whatever onto it, because I'd be scared to let it sit and record for a full hour with the Panasonic or the Tilta batteries, just because even though I do have that tool now to repair those corrupted video files, I don't want to get those corrupted video files in the first place. There's no guarantee that the tool is going to fix them, although all of the examples I've had to throw at it so far have worked, but that's not a guarantee. Plus, that does add a few more hours onto the process, because then I have, well, depending on how long the video is, and how much work it's got to do, because then you've got to take it to that second computer and do all that work to it there, which is, again, it's going to take several hours, and then move it back to the my Mac for editing. Oh, but first, I still have to make all the proxies and all of that too. So, every bit of time that you could shave off is going to be helpful. And so, you don't want to get those corrupted video files in the first place. That's, even if it was guaranteed to work, still, that's hours added on to your workload. And unfortunately, I only have one 970 battery. I've got, I think, four 740 batteries and one 970 battery. Yeah, one 970 battery, four 740 batteries. So, if I was doing an all day shoot, or like, this is something that I'm kind of hoping to do maybe this coming summer or something, is to go out to Cub Run and do a whole nother series of Cub Run, and just, one day knock them out and do, maybe 4 or 5 videos out there, because there's a lot to get out there. I mean, there is like a dozen good shots, within like 20 feet out at Cub Run. There really is. There's so many good shots to get out there. And that, I do want to focus on doing more night shoots for the nature stuff and relaxation videos, but Cub Run is so beautiful out there. I would love to do another, whole anyway, so I will need all the battery power I could get for that, because say I shoot 120 minutes at a time. All right, well, that's 2 scenes. That's already 2 hours and 40 minutes. So 3 scenes would be 3 hours and 60 minutes. So I'm probably not going to want to try to film another scene on the 970 battery. But I mean, that is still highway, or highly impressive, because that would be 3 hour and 20 minute shoots on one battery. But I would like to get 5, 6, as many as I can in a day, over, or 2 days. Even if we ended up stretching it into that, out at Cub Run. But just, again, because there's so much to shoot out there. There's so many good angles, and so much stuff to frame. Okay, now, excuse me as I'm looking to the screen, that we are now at 35 millimeters, still at 800 ISO, and our aperture now is up to 4.4, because this is a variable aperture zoom. And there is some, I'm just starting to notice there is some delay. I hope it's in the HDMI connection and not between my microphone and the camera. But, there is some delay there going on my screen, and my voids is not matching my mouth. It wouldn't be the first time something didn't fit in my mouth, but I'm just saying. And you can tell, it's getting darker too. that is the advantage of having that both a fast aperture and a fixed aperture. Um, you know, but it is what it is. This was the only way I was gonna get a good wide angle, a decent wide angle with autofocus under like $600. So and again, it does not look bad. It does not look like a bad image at all. I do wish the aperture was faster, but that's how it goes for zoom lenses. I think the fastest I've seen on a zoom lens was like 2 or 2.5, maybe something like that. It might have even been 2.8. But and that was like, practically $1 billion, not literally $1 billion, but it was like, I think 1,000 and something dollars, it's just, and that wasn't even an L mount. I think that was one of the micro four thirds I had looked at for my GH5. And, that is ridiculous. you know, I can't afford nothing like that. But the prime lenses, on the other hand, tend to be really, really fast sometimes. Some I've seen some as fast as one, and then there's a few more at like 1.2, 1.4, 1.8 is actually fairly common with the primes, and 1.8 is what our 50 millimeter is that we got with the camera, and as you could see in the other videos, especially once we got like all the other stuff figured out, those last couple videos, that lens looks fantastic. On the other hand, unfortunately, I was the subject. So, you had a fantastic image of a very despicable subject. And the 50 millimeter is probably going to be my go-to for most things, of course, because, and again, as I said, in my personal opinion, 50 millimeter is the most important focal length to have in your kit. But, so especially if I'm doing still photography, 50 millimeter is it. For the most part, 50 millimeter is it. But we are going to take some photos with this lens too. I haven't done it yet. I haven't done that yet, obviously. Like I said, this is the first thing I've done with this lens at all, other than like take it out of the box and like look at it. Like, disregard that last part. I am so sorry. But yeah, so anyway, maybe we'll put up some pictures, a little slideshow right here of pictures that I took in the future with this lens, and now I'm posting them over top of me in the past. Oh shit, I'm a time traveler. I am a time traveler, apparently. Back to the future, as Marty McFries once said. I don't think he ever like actually said that. Doc said that in the movie. He was like, I think it was like at the end of the movie. It was like, oh, he said the thing. We're going back to the future, motherfucker. I'm Doc Brown, motherfucker. No, yeah, not really that last part though. However, the lack of bokeh can be helpful sometimes for the nature shoots. Even though it's a fixed aperture on the prime lens, though, I can still step that down in camera. I just can't do it physically on the lens, and it's not a variable. Well, of course, it's not a zoom lens anyway, but yeah. So it would be nice if this one could have a fixed aperture. it'd be nice if this one could have a fixed aperture, so that at least that 3.5 could be like maintained all the way up to 60 millimeter. But a lack of bokeh can be helpful in especially doing those nature shoots, because you know you want to keep a lot of those details as much as possible for those shoots, because the whole idea is to put the viewer in that space, you know, to on the creek at Cub Run, or at the overlook of the was it in George Washington Storybook Trail and George Washington National Forest. It's a big trail. Well, not that big, but it's a trail that you hike, and then you come out to this like overlook, and you look over the Page Valley, and it's pretty nice. But yeah, so that's the idea with some of those relaxation videos, is to put the viewer in that spot. And unless you've got bad eyes, which I do, to be fair, and full disclosure, cards on the table and apples out, whatever, you know, um, but typically, you don't have bokeh in real life. And I'm sorry for hitting the microphone right there. But, you don't have bokeh in real life. You don't look at the thing in the middle of the river and then have all the trees in the background blurred out, you know. Uh, stepping down that aperture can be very helpful in those situations. And the 3.5, as it sits, is actually not a bad aperture for that situation. Um, Again, I would probably, unless it was just something that I needed to get closer up on, so I needed that wide angle, I'd probably still just use my 50 millimeter and stop it down. Uh, but I don't know. Um, you know, what was that? I heard something. It was like a. It sounded like I was coming through the TV, but I muted the TV, you son of a bitch. This is what 50 millimeters looks like on the kit lens. And we did have to boost our ISO up to 1250, so I apologize if this starts getting a little bit grainier. Our aperture now is at f5.3, and you can really see me. I am definitely not John Cena at this point, and I am not even going to try to reposition the camera when we go all the way up to 60. So I am sorry for that. We'll see here in a couple minutes, I suppose. But, yes. I did look at an adapter for my old Canon, is it EFS lenses that came with I got with my old Canon DSLR, the T3i, because I do have it's like, I think, is it 50 to 250 or something like that, zoom lens for that camera. And, you know, so there's an adapter that I can get to hook that up to this camera. But there is, still a couple caveats. The adapter is only like roughly around $100, and it is a special order item, so I'd have to pay my $100 and probably wait 2 to 3 weeks before they actually ship it to me. But then also, once I get it, I'd have to put the camera into APS-C mode, which means I'm no longer using the full frame. And also, the adapter does not support the autofocus features. So the autofocus stopped working on my camera T3i, my Canon T3i. So I don't know if that was a problem with the lens or if that was a problem with the camera, but it is what it is. So I don't think that I'm going to go with that option, uh, just because I feel like that's going to be a waste of $100, and then you know, uh, I really, especially now that I've got a camera with phase detect autofocus, uh, you know, I really want to utilize that autofocus when I can. And if I'm using a zoom lens, the autofocus is actually going to be pretty important, because if I'm using the zoom lens, then I'm probably going to be trying to photograph wildlife or, something at a show or something, that situation where you're going to be holding down the shutter button, on the repeat thing. What do you call that? When it's like, a zillion shots per second, and it's like, and then you have to scroll through all of them to pick the one you actually like, and it's a big pain in the ass, and I try to avoid shooting that way whenever possible. Because like scrolling through those photos on the Mac and then picking the one that you want and everything could be a real pain in the ass. But, you know, when you're photographing something like wildlife or a sports event or a concert or, something like that where quickness is essential, because that moment is like here and gone. So you don't want to have to. What I'm saying is, you don't want to have to fool around with having to manually adjust your focus. So you want a good phase detect autofocus for those situations. So I want to get a good zoom lens. I want to get that 70 to 300. I'll have the same problem with virtual aperture or vir- I cannot talk. Variable apertures. Variable apertures. I'm going to have to like fucking write that on the blackboard 5,000 times. Variable apertures. Variable apertures. Various various apple burgers. Something like that. And here we are at 60 millimeters, and whoo, I am a little bit up close. At our aperture is now at 5.6. I boosted our ISO up to 1600, which is not a comfortable range for me. I don't like aperture or ISO 1600. I don't see the noise on this TV, but that's generally, the noise starts coming in. The noise comes out at high ISOs until you get to your second ISO, base ISO, if you've got one of those dual band ISO cameras like this one is. Unfortunately, the second ISO is 4,000. So that's going to be probably a little bit too much, although we can try it here in a minute. Before we go back, we'll try that. We will try that. I don't stutter. You're hearing things. No point. Okay, so now the other settings are pretty much the same, but we have boosted the ISO to 4,000. So we are at our second base ISO right now. Forgive me because I'm about to start talking while looking at the screen instead of the lens. I'm sorry. I'm still paying attention to you, baby. I love you. I'm still paying attention to you. I'm just looking at her over here, But yeah, that actually even at 5.6 right here, that bokeh is pretty subtle there behind me, but it's there. And it doesn't really look bad. It really doesn't look bad at all. As a matter of fact, I think I was wrong about using that 4000 ISO right here because, this picture actually looks pretty good. As a matter of fact, we might try scaling back down and, you know, leaving the ISO at 4000 at each one and just, seeing how that goes. That might not go the same because obviously, as we're scaling back, the aperture is going to open up wider, so which means that the lens is going to take in more light. So this might end up being too much ISO as we scale back. So, I'm just giving you fair warning of that because, that's how cameras work. That's just how cameras work. But we're testing, to see where it goes. And we are back to 50 millimeter at f5.3 and 4000 ISO. And still, we're a little bit overexposed maybe, but, not bad. Not bad. As a matter of fact, I bet. So there we go. I just basically, I don't know why I wasn't thinking this. I just stepped down our aperture to 6.3. So, it looks just, it didn't really look blown out. A second ago at 5.3, I think it was at. But just a little bit better. Just a little bit better. And again, the all of my toys and stuff behind me still look nice and soft and just a little subtle bokeh. And I know that my camera is not aligned straight very well because the thing on screen, So as I step down, I'll try to readjust and fix that, you son of a bitch. Me, son of a bitch. So we're back at 35 millimeter, and I sort of fixed the axis. Our aperture is at 5.6, still at 4000 ISO. And I did, again, I stepped it down. We're a little bit overblown. I might be able to fix that in post. Probably could. Well, let's just, for funsies sakes, I'm leaving this part of the clip uncolor graded just so, you can see what it naturally looks like when it's recorded. And we're going to split right here and add a color grade to it to show you, that we can fix some of that as long as it's not like really overblown. As long as it's not like really blown out, then we can fix a lot of that in post. But you don't want to rely on that. You don't want to rely on that. It's like when you shoot raw, people have the argument of when you're doing photography, still photography, do you shoot in JPEG or do you shoot in RAW and have more options? The arguments on both sides of that is that, well, no, you shoot it in RAW so that way, you can get to your shot quicker and then you can worry about the exposure, all of that in post. And the other side of that argument is that, well, no, you get it right in camera and then you don't have to worry about it. The actual answer to that, though, is that you get it right in camera, but still shoot in RAW so that way if you end up changing your mind about the way it looks later, you still have more options for editing in post if you so choose to do that, or if you just happen to get it wrong, because that happens. The most experienced in any field, still get it wrong once in a while. Famously, Albert Einstein thought that the Big Bang was absurd. And it turns out, at least, there's 99%, even if we're living in a black hole, that that Big Bang is still a thing. If a black hole starts as a singularity and then, you know, becomes a wormhole to a white hole or becomes another whole universe, that Big Bang was still there. So Einstein was wrong. Newton was wrong in that thinking that gravity was constant or static, however you want to look at that. And it's just, yeah, my point is that, you fuck up sometimes. You get something wrong once in a while, no matter how good you are. And now it really does look overblown. But we'll figure that out. Oh, do not end that drink. You know, but yeah, so, you know, with photography, you shoot in RAW and you still try to get it right in camera first. So, yeah, that's my lesson in that. But so the same is true in this. You can, with just being a little bit overblown, you can go back and fix that in post, but you still want to try to get it right in the camera first, because if it does get too overblown, you could have, 50 stops at whatever of dynamic range and still not have enough room to recover, just total blowout. So the less you have to do in post, the better, but that option is there if it's just a minor thing, if we're just a little bit blown out. And I think actually we might be a little bit blown out right here. Not too bad, but I don't know. We'll find out. We will definitely find out. How about I? And speaking of, just for shits and giggles, we are at 20 millimeters at f3.5 and 4000 ISO. So, I don't know if I would call this totally blown out, but, it's definitely a little much. It's definitely a little much. So, in sticking with this 4000 ISO, first, you know what? Let's give this another minute, split right here, and try to color correct this. Just to show or prove myself wrong about the difference in difficulty, sort of correcting that color. Let's see about it. Let us see about it. How do we look? How do we look? I don't know because I'm doing that color correction in post. So I don't know, Colin Jost. What do you know? Not much. And now that is, I think, a lot better. We are, again, I'm going to put this one first without color grading. We are at still 20 millimeters, 4000 ISO, but we've stopped down our aperture to 5.6. So this would be a lot easier if I was just like using the app or something and, you know, or was adjusting it on another person, just because it's kind of hard to, figure it out completely because like my skin tone is different than, the other objects in the room. And so, excuse me, it's a little bit hard when I'm trying to adjust for that from behind the camera, and then I have to get in front of the camera. It's like, oh shit, did I do it correct? Or, am I doing this all wrong? What do I know? I don't know much in this world. And so now we're going to be color corrected again right here. If we need it, I think we will, because it always does. Even when I think that the picture is fucking fantastic up on the screen most of the time, I have to do something. I have to usually decrease the lift and the gamma, and sometimes slightly give the offset a boost, and more often than not also give the offset a slight cut. So usually I'm cutting all three. the lift, the gamma, and the offset. Just That's just usually the way it goes. That's the way it is. That's the way, it happens. Hey, girl. Hey, girl. But this is a nice wide angle with a good picture, and that's what I like, or that's what I needed. That's what I need, and I have to give this lens a good grade. I give it an A plus. I will give our battery testing on here a B minus because I don't know. It's a little bit frustrating because these batteries did so much better on the GH5. And I guess it's just me being a stoner. The long form content seems to come a lot better. Uh, it seems to come a lot easier. Usually it's just tickle it behind the ear a little bit and, and it's gone. It's there. Um, Again, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. As my brain is all scrambled eggs. That was my brain on drugs. That was my brain on drugs. It's all scrambled eggs. I definitely can't make any complaints. I definitely cannot register any complaints. All right, so I think I got a little bit left over in here still from yesterday's bish. Um, I'm sorry, I still keep looking off at the screen. So, yeah. Let's close this out in fashion. Fashion. In fashion. The way we used to do. The way we used to do. Remember that when I used to always take a couple hits, like at the end of every video? That was not, those were the good old days. I'd even have a halftime heat somewhere up in that sheet. That was neat. That was neato. That was neato. Me son of a bitch. Cheers. Yeah. Pretty nice. That is, I give it a good grade. Maybe some strawberry lemonade. When do I get paid? Yeah, mate. Call me babe. I miss you too. I miss them butt cheeks. How do you be? Or something like that. There's something to those effects. So yeah, um, thanks for hanging out with me throughout this 4 hour and 50 year full frame addendum, or whatever you windom. Rotunda. I love you. I will catch you all in the next one, babies. I love you. Bye 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 bye. Tummy shark doo 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 doo. Tummy shark doo 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 doo. Tummy shark squirt squirts and squirts and squirt. Strike the hammer while high in his hurt. The first dab got my poop going. The second dab just fucked up my lungs.